Hey everyone, Effie here. Today I'm going back to my roots and I'm picking up my watercolor paints because I'm going to watercolor our beautiful Noteworthy Blooms outline floral stamp. So I'm starting off by taking off this nice large stamp. I'm going to place it on the door of the Misty tool, but before I heat emboss it, I'm going to apply some anti-static powder onto the watercolor paper, and then I'm going to stamp the Noteworthy Blooms image onto the watercolor paper. And that anti-static powder is just going to ensure that this embossing powder that I'm spooning on only sticks to the outline of this beautiful floral image. Once I've spooned on the white embossing powder, I'm going to heat the panel with my heat gun. Now on my panel you see some brown on the lower left corner. That's just some watercolor paint that was on my hand and it got onto the paper. But don't worry, I'm going to lift that color off the paper. I'm just taking a clean brush and I'm going to apply water on it, and I'm going to lift that color up with a paper towel. And then I'm using a combination of a large brush and a small water brush, and I'm going to begin my painting. I wet my panel with clean water first, and then I start dropping in some pinkish reddish paint into the inner portions of my floral petals. And then with the large brush, a large clean brush, I start blending that color that I just put down. I blend it out towards the outer edges of the panel, and I go back and forth. I repeat the process until I'm satisfied with the coverage. For this rose, I'm using a little bit of a reddish pink watercolor paint. When I go back to add more color inside the inner portions of my petal to give it a deeper concentration of color, this is a technique that you call glazing in the watercoloring world. I've been watching some YouTube videos, so I've learned that the term is called glazing. So for the anemone flower that's on the lower portion of this design, I'm going in with a base color of orange. It's more of a vermilion shade, which is kind of a combination of an orange and a red. So I go in with the vermilion shade of orange for the anemone base, and then I also add a little bit of that vermilion orangish hue to the rose on top. So I'm dropping in that orange and I'm pulling the color out to the edges of the petal. However, you want to make sure that you're not overwhelming each area that you're painting with the watercolor paint. You want to make sure you leave some shades of that red, and you just want to add a little bit of the orange. And now I'm adding a little bit of yellow, a golden yellow, to both the anemone and the rose. You don't have to add the colors to all of the petals. I just dot some of that yellow to some of the petals, blend it out, and then I move on to the next flower with the yellow, and I kind of go back and forth between the three shades of watercolors that I'm using: the pinkish red, the orangish vermilion, and the gold color. I'm just blending the three watercolor paints in the three flowers. I just want to make sure that we see some bits of nice bright pinkish red, some bright yellows in some portions of the petals. There's no set formula on how I choose what to paint where. I kind of embrace the chaos. Just make sure you leave some white space or highlights in your petals so that you have some nice light white areas in some of the petals and nice deep dark areas or contrast or shading in some of the petals. The darker contrasted shaded areas are most likely the inner portions of the petals, and then the lightest areas are the outer edges of the petals. Now I'm going to go ahead and begin to watercolor the background, and I use a combination of greens and blues, and I drop in bits of color, and then I blend the color out, and I'm not even making sure to color inside the lines. At this point, it is a little bit chaotic. You see that I'm getting some of that green or blue paint inside the flower petals. That's okay, just blend it out just a little bit, but embrace the chaos. It's going to look nice at the end. And I do go back and forth to add additional color inside my floral petals as well. And then I go back to add some nice deep blue areas inside the leaves, because I think that the contrast of the dark blues and greens look really beautiful against the bright flowers. So now that my painting is done, I'm going to let the panel dry, and then I trimmed the edges of my watercolored panel. And then I'm going to choose a sentiment from our Easy Expressions Sympathy set. Next, I glued my panel onto a piece of A2 cardstock. I just want the watercolored panel to be matted nicely onto that white background so that it looks more like an art piece. Next, I just popped up my sentiment, added some iridescent dewdrops, and my card is complete. I hope you enjoyed this video. I encourage you to pull out your floral stamps and practice your watercoloring too. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. I'll be back with more content soon. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I'll see you next time.